This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Corenna and Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different cues.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Corenna Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 with former Maine Governor and Republican candidate for Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Paul LePage.
I'm sure you're aware of, before the election, we had 250 ballots not show up at the right spot. And I think at this time, we still haven't had any closure on it. Being a congressman working in the federal government, obviously voting is extremely important. Have you heard anything more about this situation?
I haven't heard, and I'm very, very concerned. This morning is an article about Shanna Bellows saying the federal government is suing the state of Maine, and the state of Maine is trying to get it dismissed. Shanna Bellows saying there's no fraud. Let me tell you, folks, there is fraud. There's fraud. And I'll tell you some of the places that I know there's fraud. Lewiston, Portland, South Portland, and Bangor all have fraud. And when you go to a poll on election day and you start talking to people and they can't speak English, but they're voting, that's fraud. Because you have to be able to read part of the Constitution to be naturalized in this country. And so I know that in Lewiston, a lot of people, non-citizens, are voting. The Secretary of State says, well, a few might have got through. I'm going to tell you, I've run 3 statewide elections. And Lewiston, which is my hometown, I've always done very well in, except for 22, where one ward was almost unanimously against me. And I just don't see that. I don't see it being possible. And I have a lot of friends in Lewiston that says it's awful. People are voting, and they know they're not citizens. So the Secretary of State says she wants to get the case dismissed because there's no fraud. Well, if there's no fraud, what are you afraid of? If there's no fraud, open the books. And then we'll solve this problem, and everybody will have confidence in the voting apparatus that we have in Maine, and we move on. But by not allowing a third party to look at the books, that concerns me a great deal.
Have you been following the reports about Gateway Community Services receiving an overpayment from the state of Maine?
Yes, and I'm very, very concerned because back in 2018, when I left the governor's office and Janet Mills was coming in, during the transition, we made very clear to them that they had to be investigating certain companies and certain organizations in the state of Maine. Unfortunately, it fell on deaf ears. Nothing's ever happened. And we know that there's overbilling, and the federal government is trying to understand what's going on. It started pretty much in Minnesota, and when it hit the national media from Minnesota, I called the White House and said, you ought to take a look at Maine, because Maine is just as bad, if not worse. Because we know where we have our political office in Augusta, it's on Sewell Street. Downstairs is a little organization, not Gateway, but there's another organization there providing Medicaid services. And the 3 cars that are in the lot are probably over $100,000 each. There's no question that the cars that are being parked, that are being driven by these folks, is big money. If Medicaid is that lucrative, maybe we should, instead of selling cars, we go into the Medicaid business. Because I'm telling you, there's some real fraud. This is sort of speculation, but I will tell you one thing that's not speculation. In 2015, we tracked EBT cards, and we found $10 million that went from Western Union and Lewiston, Maine to Somalia. $10 million over the course of a year. So we know there's a lot of fraud. It's just a matter of people doing the proper audits on these organizations. And my opponent's going to have an awful lot to answer for because he's the state auditor. So I'm going to be talking to him about why these people are not being audited.
I think I read somewhere that he stated they will be audited next time.
He's not going to be there one way or another.
So when you're out on the campaign trail and people are talking to you about this fraud, I mean, they must know that we all pay for it, either on our income tax or our property tax. You must hear it out there. People must be getting upset.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Because we're paying for it.
We're paying for it. The state of Maine, the people of the state of Maine, the federal government's paying for it, and there's no question about it. People are very, very upset. In fact, it's gone to the point now that Steve Robinson at the Maine Wire had a contract put on him by a person who's now no longer in the country. I understand he went back home, but he wanted him taken out because he exposed the company. We finally got a U.S. attorney appointed by the Trump administration, and this is one thing that we need to visit his office and bring to his attention, that he needs to be looking into some fraudulent activity in the state of Maine. Back in 2015, I go back when I was governor, we put pictures on EBT cards. The reason we put pictures on EBT card, one of the major reasons, was every time we did a drug bust, we'd get a handful, 15, 20, 30 EBT cards. At first, I was naive in thinking that they're in the black market. It turns out it's a form of payment for their drugs. The minute we put the pictures on it, that problem went away almost overnight because nobody wants to get their pictures in the hands of a drug dealer. The sad thing was the first week that Janet Mills took office, she took the pictures off.
When you reached out to the White House, what was their response?
The response was that they were in the process of getting, it was during the shutdown. So they were in the process of getting the final appointments made, and they couldn't do it because Congress wasn't in session. So I guess now they have appointed a U.S. attorney for the state of Maine, and I'm sure that we have to make sure that he looks into these allegations. And I'm sure that the White House will give him a list of the things that we talked about.
What are your thoughts about Jared Golden pulling out of the race?
I was looking forward to running against Jared. I mean, Jared's is experienced, so he knows what's going on at the federal level. And so I was looking forward to a healthy campaign year, but he dropped out now. I take him at his word, and he has a young family. He has young kids, and I'm sure that he wants, if he's like me, he wants to be home with his kids. Because I used to have to travel a lot, and that wasn't a whole lot of fun, missing school events and missing the kids growing up. So I take him at his word. I was disappointed hearing that his family got some threats. That's, in my mind, there's no room for anybody threatening anybody in this country. And that's just absolutely over the top. And if that happened, I feel real bad, and we ought to try to trace it down because it's going to happen to everybody. I mean, I had threats when I was governor. And in fact, some people went to jail.
Well, the political climate seems so dangerous these days. How concerned are you about the rise of political violence and threats toward candidates and elected officials? And what should be done about it? How does this end?
It's only going to end when you find another Ronald Reagan and another Tip O'Neill, that two people from opposing parties that can sit down and talk to their caucuses, and that will solve the federal, and it'll work its way down. But the leadership, it's getting worse and worse because the leadership is involved in both houses. I mean, it's crazy. They've got to settle it down, and they're not doing it. I mean, we need new faces. There's no question we need new faces. The problem is not only at the federal level. In Augusta, it's gotten very, very bad. Back when I was governor, we had problems, and there was always a handful of Democrats and Republicans that wouldn't talk to people. But now it seems like it's everybody. A Republican can't get up and speak. They'll shut him down. And it's crazy stuff. You're elected to do a job for the people of the state of Maine. You have a constituency. You have to represent them. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you got to do the job. But I remember slamming doors. When I was governor, there were slam doors. That was my own party. We had our issues. But it was not to the point now. Now it's like absolute hatred. They won't talk. And if you don't talk, you can't get legislation done.
Do you think a lot of it is that lobbyists have so much control over some of their leadership that they only can vote one way and then not talk to the other side?
Yes, I think to a certain degree that the lobbyists are a big problem because the people elected to govern don't write laws. They're all written by lobbyists. And yes, and they are getting paid by, it's a money game, and they don't want you to talk to the opposition. There's a certain amount of that, but that can be handled. That could be handled easily. If the leadership and the legislative council put their foot down, that could resolve it. I remember when I was governor, a lot of lobbyists would come in and lobby me, and the one thing that I've heard, the difference between Janet Mills and Paul LePage is you always knew where Paul LePage stood. So if you had to come in and have a convincing argument to get them on your side. Janet Mills, she plays poker. She doesn't tell anybody where she's going to go. And so it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, Corinne and I went down to the State House a few months ago, and we were trying to talk to some of the legislators down there, and one was tied up from a lobbyist that we never got to talk to, and the lobbyist was from Massachusetts, and here we are from the state of Maine, and still didn't get to talk to that person as we drove down an hour. That's when I got a little concerned that, geez, who are you taking care of, me or the lobbyist?
It's the lobbyist. There's no question. They get a lot of money from lobbyists. The lobbyists provide writers to write bills, because most of them don't write bills. I mean, my daughter, she's a lobbyist. She's an attorney. She works for companies that do business in Maine. And yeah, they lean on her to write the bills. And she's a great writer, so they lean on her. And she'll write bills and they'll support her positions. Is it right or wrong? You have Democratic lobbyists, you have Republican lobbyists. I think to a certain degree you need them because they're an outside voice. But I'll give you a little bit of trivia. Do you know where the word lobbyist comes from?
No.
President Ulysses S. Grant was staying at the Willard when he first became president. He said, look at all those people looking for jobs and they're hanging around the lobby. He said, we're going to start calling them lobbyists.
It makes sense.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Corenna Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a discussion with former Maine Governor and Republican candidate for Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Paul LePage. Now that you're deeper into the campaign, I think it's been 6 months since we met with you last, what stands out to you the most at this stage of the campaign?
The reception we get is phenomenal. So that I'll say right now, it's incredible. Compared to back in 2010 when I ran for governor and you go to a meeting and you have 3 people and 2 of them work for Bruce Poliquin. It was a tough time, but now we're getting a lot of people. People are interested, they're asking questions. It's frankly the first time I've been in a campaign that I'm the front runner. That sounds really good. It's great for the polls. It's great for people, enthusiasm. The thing that concerns me a bit is that it's a midterm election, and if people stay home thinking he's going to win this, that's the thing that we're concerned about. So getting the people to come out and vote is really, really important. And in Maine, we do hear a lot, why vote? Your votes don't count, it's rigged. We hear that a lot, and that is scary, because if you don't vote, I can't win. And so I need you to vote so that we can win. So that's going to be a big issue. On the other side of it, from the people's point of view, CD2 is not a very wealthy district, and there's a lot of hurt out there. People are struggling. Heating is a big, big issue. A lot of them are concerned that if LIHEAP's not out, if they don't release that LIHEAP, people could be getting very, very cold this winter. That's a big issue. Food costs is a big issue. And I'll tell you, I know that gasoline is coming down, but oil doesn't seem to be coming down as fast as the gasoline's coming down. So we have to deal with those issues, and those are federal issues. And I think the battle between the administration and the central bank is a problem, and interest rates are way too high.
Yeah, I know they cut it another quarter of a point, but it doesn't seem like anything's dropping.
Yeah, it should have been a half. And a quarter is just not enough right now, and we need some help. And what people don't understand is once inflation hits, the prices will never come down. All it does is it slows the increase. So we're faced with the inflation rates, and Maine is not only the oldest state in the union, but it has a minimum wage that's tied to CPI, which is the biggest mistake they ever made. Minimum wage is not intended to be a living wage. It's a start-out rate. It's a teaching rate. And you start out there and you get experience and you get good at your job and you get increases. People that live on minimum wage and think that that should be a higher wage hurt productivity. I heard something the other day. If you pay me minimum wage, I get minimum pay and you get minimum work.
Well, I see Portland's going to go up to $19 an hour in a few years.
Yeah.
How do you make a sandwich or a coffee in Portland paying at $19 when you got 4 or 5 employees handing out the coffee?
When I was governor, I remember we had this battle about going for I think it was $8.50 or $8.25 to $12. And I was saying, if it's the minimum wage, 2 things are going to happen. Prices are going to go up And everybody that's above minimum wage now, if you're making $3 or $4 above minimum wage, the minute minimum wage hits $12, you're going to want to be at $4 or $5 ahead of where you were. It's a vicious program. So I was on radio one day and we're talking about minimum wage, and I said, look at it this way. You go to McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts in the morning, and you'll have 4 or 5 elderly, and they're having a cup of coffee, and they do it a couple times a week. Now they're going to be forced to maybe only do it once a week. A lot of those folks, that's their social activity. And they don't get out, and they don't have the ability to get out because they live on some very small pensions and Social Security. And a lady called and she said, Mr. LePage, you're wrong. All Dunkin' Donuts got to do is sell more coffee. So there's a lot of people that don't understand how it works, and they struggle. And unfortunately, a lot of those same people are in the legislature, and they don't understand some of the things that they're doing. Inflation is a bad, bad thing. Prices don't go down. Commodities go up and down. But once inflation hits, right now, meat and eggs are coming down because we're allowing foreign eggs to come into the country. We're allowing beef from Argentina to come into the country. These are all things we never allowed before. That's the only way you're going to get the prices down. The inflation rate, which is the rate that, goods and services, your paycheck's not going to go down. You certainly don't want your paychecks to go down. So careful what you wish for, because that's what happens when inflation hits. And what we're doing now is we're trying to slow the rate of inflation. So the prices aren't going down. Your everyday prices aren't going to be going down. The commodities will go down a little bit. Things like gas might go down, but gas goes down. Heating oil doesn't seem to be going down. Propane's not going down. So it's going to be trouble for a lot of people this winter.
Well, another thing that's not going down is property taxes.
Oh, and I'll tell you, I said it earlier, in the state of Maine, until the people recognize that the biggest problem is home rule on schools, that you need to start consolidating your school systems. We're losing population every single year, but the schools stay open, and we're just adding more money to it. And so at some point, we need to completely overhaul the education system.
Before we let you go, have you been following Washington County, Penobscot County, and other counties that are facing serious budget pressures? And what's your view on proposals like LD 2009, put in, I believe, by Senator Marianne Moore, which would allow counties to seek bankruptcy protection if needed?
Bankruptcy is not the answer, period. It's not the answer. I'm telling you right now, the only way is good legislation. Fix the jails. Every county's got a jail. That's a big, big drain on the system. You need to fix the jails, and you need to have a public defender system. This thing about hiring these lawyers, they come in, and I remember the rate was $50 an hour. What used to take an hour now takes 2 hours. That's how they get their increase. That's just a bad, bad system. The prosecutor system in Maine works pretty well, and we should do that with lawyers for the defendants. We need a system. But home rule is the big problem. Now, you go down south, you don't have these problems down south. If you look at the Southeast in particular, where everything is done at the county level, they don't have home rule. So schools are run at the county level, the jails and all, valuations on homes is at the county level. It's not a town level. It's all done by the counties. It's so much less expensive in those areas. Taxes, registering cars, those type of things, it's so less expensive than here in Maine, where you have home rule and every little community has their own clerk and they have their own tax assessor and just way, way too much. And it can be done so much more efficiently. But home rule is a big, big issue in Maine.
So, Paul, thank you very much for coming in again. And if people want to get involved in your campaign, what's the best way for them to do that?
You go to lepageforcongress.com, L-E-P-A-G-E. A lot of people are spelling it L-A. It's L-E-P-A-G-E, lepageforcongress.com. And you can volunteer, you can ask questions, you can donate, whatever your preference. We're going to be looking for volunteers to help us this summer and fall. As the campaign heats up, we're going to be needing a lot of volunteers. So please, lepageforcongress.com, and we'll get back to you. If you sign up, then you'll get a whole lot of information from the campaign on what's going on.
former Maine Governor and Republican candidate for Maine's 2nd Congressional District, Paul LePage. Thank you so much for joining us again. It's always good to see you.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Love coming to Bangor.
Thank you, Paul.
You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.